morning. This is the Board of Weber County Commissioners on this
This meeting is being recorded.
29th of June. It's 10:02 a.m. Present to my right is Commissioner Scott K. Jenkins. To my left is Commissioner Gage Frohr. I'm Commissioner Harvey. Our Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by our Human Resource Director, Ms. Sarah Swan. Our invocation will be given by Commissioner Frohr. Our thought of the day by Commissioner Scott Jenkins. Ms. Swan?
Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Father in heaven, as we come together as citizens this week to celebrate the birth of this great country, we give thanks for all your blessings, and especially those blessings of freedom. We give thanks for our founding fathers and their inspired work in creating the opportunities we enjoy of self-determination and the ability to live our lives in a manner that will benefit all those around us. Father, we ask for your strength to find the way even through suffering and distress, and help those in need to receive your strength to lift their spirits through difficult times. We ask that you bless those families that have suffered losses in our county, and we ask for a special blessing for those families that have recently suffered loss of loved ones. We ask for your blessings to ensure the decisions we make today as a commission are made with your guidance and inspiration. We ask that thy Spirit be with all citizens this special weekend. And so this special day we'll be celebrating will be safe for all as we celebrate the freedom we enjoy. Father, finally we ask for your guidance so that we as citizens may all work together for a better future, knowing that we are all friends and neighbors. Help us treat each other in a kind and respectful manner. We say this prayer in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Commissioner Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thought today has to do with, go along with Commissioner Frohr's prayer. As we get to the point in our calendar every year, we get to this point, we start talking about our freedoms and what makes this such a great country. The fact that we were formed from a desire that people had to be free and to address their personal journeys through this world. And there's a new word that's starting to creep in that I'm very concerned about. It's called equity. Everybody's talking about equity now. Well, equity is not equality, and it's not freedom. And we need to be very, very, very careful about what we think about equity and spreading things equally around. It's just, I'm telling you, we need to be careful. We're right on the verge of somewhere we don't want to go. Equality is something we all believe in. We're all equal. We all have our own freedoms to succeed or fail on our own. And that's the way this country was founded, and that's the way we need to have it continue to go today. And as a commission, I want you to know I'm proud to be a member of this commission with you too. We've done great things here, and we have a good commission. We've lowered the debt of this county, and I think this county is stronger than it's ever been that I've ever seen it, and we've got to keep it going. So on this 4th of July coming up, freedom, let's celebrate and have a good time. That's my thought, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that very much. Related to our agenda, item number E is a time now if we can take public comments. Those public comments will be heard on items that appear on our action items. So if any of you have any comments in the galley here or online related to items that appear on the agenda, you're welcome to come and present those to us now. They'll be heard. Seeing none in person, are there any online, Shelley? None being, I did receive some comments via an email, but that came in yesterday. We may choose to hear those next week. Sir?
You said the comment period is now,
Yes.
rather than when the item comes up on the agenda?
Yes, sir. You'll come up, you'll have 3 minutes to address the commission. Go ahead, please. State your name and the city where you're from.
Hopefully you'll give me longer because my name is James A. Bird. I'm at 1052 Meadowlark Lane in Huntsville, Utah. I am representing the HOA Board of Trustees in the chalets and 72 property owners. I've been doing a lot of research as I've met with Commissioner Jenkins. I've talked with both of you on it. I want to start it off. This is regarding the rezoning from CVR1 to FR3 on the lot that corners the intersection of Highway 39 and Old Snow Basin Road. I want you to be aware, just kind of preface, by changing the zoning from CVR1 to FR3, the county is establishing a precedent that will allow developers to build recreational units, call them single-family residents, non-commercial, and sell them as STRs. In turn, this allows developers to circumvent all the ordinances that apply to the hospitality industry, such as the American Disability Act. People with disabilities have worked hard to get this law established. By approving this rezoning, you are knowingly allowing this to happen. And as county personnel are fond of saying, as it pertains to STRs, if we allow one developer to do it, how do we prevent others? If you allow one developer to change a zone, a commercial zone, to a forest recreational, to put STRs there, how are you going to stop others all throughout the valley? This is a zoning change to establish 13 8-bedroom homes in their own development plan that the chalet, or rather CW Land has proposed. They're asking to house in each one of these 13, 20 occupants. This is an occupancy. They'll need a little occupancy sign maybe. That's 260 potential residents in a 3.22 lot. That violates, I think, every zoning law on commercial even. But I could be wrong, but it certainly is not a single-family resident unit. These are designed as STRs. You've already had a problem with STRs. Your last meeting, or one of your meetings on 4/19 in 2020, you actually said that you wanted to put them on hold. I can see why. Okay, there's a
Correction,
shortage of-
2021, not 2020.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a shortage of water. The sheer impact of these 13 STRs, in addition to the possible 260 occupants, and if they're used that way, these are going to be renters. They're going to be out of the area. They're not going to have conservation in mind. They're going to use more waters for showers, bathrooms, etc. Lakeview Water has already said there's a shortage. They had to file 3, if not 4, will serve letters that explain no commercial and only single-family residents. That's significant. There's going to be a huge drain on our already short water supply. We, in our HO, are already under a restriction for use of water. Old Snow Basin Road can't handle this traffic. You've already approved 5 other developments that haven't been built out. You add a potential 260 residents in there, rentals, on a highway that doesn't even have a right-hand turn lane, that the fire marshal has told one of our HOA people that the road is inadequate. You're creating a huge problem.
Mr. Byrd, please wrap up.
Okay. You basically seems to have two choices here, two legitimate choices. One is to maintain it as a CVR1. It's been that way for decades. Two is to approve the zoning change, but go like the Ogden Valley Planning Commission did and do not allow short-term rentals. These are nothing but hotels. They're nothing but 13 lodges.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd.
Thank you.
We do have a commenter online. Person online, go ahead and state your name and your city where you live, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Ian Houghton. I live in Salt Lake City, but I have a place at Lakeside in Huntsville. And I just wanted to express a few comments about this proposal. I think,
Houghton, if you'll make
as you
sure,
recognize
Mr.
as
Houghton, if you'll
commissioners,
make sure
the,
those comments are different than what we've heard, appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I understand the time limitations. I just wanted you to recognize that the Ogden Valley is kind of the jewel of Weber County, and it's very tempting to allow continued extensive high-density development up there. But the reality is you'll eventually kill the golden goose. And so I think this particular plan is exactly the kind of thing you don't want to do. Certainly more residences would be fine. It's zoned for that, and that's somebody's property, and they have the right to do that. But by requesting a zoning change, that becomes a takings from other property owners who bought up there with the expectation that the zoning that they see was going to stay that way. And so I hear a lot of chit-chat about the importance of property rights, but it's not just the developer's property rights, it's the people who are already there. And certainly the Valley residents are happy to accommodate additional residents, additional visitors. That's certainly the point of a high-use recreation center like that. But to change the zoning after the fact, I think is disingenuous to anybody who is already invested in that neighborhood. And certainly to Dr. Byrd's comments, there's a traffic and congestion and issues that are going to be associated with that. So I just wanted you to recognize that it's not a win for everyone to do something like this, and it's actually a big negative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Are there any others, Shelley?
Yes, Dana Johnson.
Ms. Johnson, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Dana Johnson, and I'm a resident in Huntsville, and also live very near where this development is going to, or this suggested development is going to be. I echo all the points that the last two gentlemen have said. Also, Old Snow Basin Road and its intersection at Highway 39 is not designed for the amount of development that the county has already approved. The county will be putting current residents in danger if an evacuation is needed, and I hope that you'll take that under consideration. There's just one access out of from Old Snow Basin Road with many, many residents up Old Snow Basin Road and the current developments and the future developments that are occurring. So I think that is a major concern. Also with, there's been multiple accidents at this intersection, and I think you're just adding to it by adding another additional people building in this corner and the density that is being suggested. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Are there any others? Seeing none online, go ahead.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dan Hoover. I own property at 6543 Chaparral Road, better known as The Legends. And I'm not going to take my full 3 minutes, but I just want to say that I agree with everything that has been said, but I also think about, for example, the hotel that is in Huntsville. It has to comply with all the rules that go with being a commercial property. All the standards, the ADA, the health, the fire. The property that's being proposed, the elephant in the room here is that it's really being proposed to be like a hotel. Yet it can bypass all of those regulations. I mean, it's presented as single-family homes. Let's be real. They're not. That's not what it's presented for. It's short-term rentals. How can they bypass the rules that we impose on commercial properties? It just doesn't seem fair. So I just wanted to share that concern. It just doesn't feel right. We're not really speaking truth about what is happening here. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Hoover. Any others? Please. One moment for Mr. Irwin.
My name's Tom Quinn. I live on Old Snow Basin Road.
Tom Quinn.
Correct.
I wanted to make sure it was in the mic. Thank you.
Okay. I came to a previous meeting, and it turned out I was a little bit misinformed, but I'll repeat what my concern is, the same as the last time, and I agree with everything that's been said up here. Just a few short years ago, the county put me through the ringer, making sure that I would sign a covenant, notarize it, not to rent out an apartment over my accessory building. And they kept telling me they were so concerned about population density. And now just a few years later, you're trying to put in 260 people on half the land that I have. I just don't think that's fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Shelley, who's the person online? Mr. Irwin, go ahead, please.
Hello, my name is Kevin Irwin, and I live in Huntsville on East Quail Lane. And this property directly touches my property. And from my personal standpoint, this development would create massive amounts of noise, light pollution, people being there for a short term. It would wreck my views that I have now to go through and accommodate people that are just transient, showing up and leaving. And I would expect, as one of the previous folks noted, these are basically going to be hotels. It's 13 individual hotels. If I have any problems as a homeowner being right there, I have 13 different people that I will need to deal with that don't even live in the area. They're investors. It could end up being a bank. It could end up being a private equity fund. It could be a venture fund. It could be a landowner, a bunch of people that I would not even be able to deal with or even know who to contact to complain, to identify what issues are that are going on within the buildings, or if there's noise violations or anything, or litter. There wouldn't be anybody actually there to pick up the phone and say, gee, let me help you solve this problem. So when I look at it, as noted, these look like hotels, 13 individual hotels owned by 13 different owners, and none of them have a vested interest in Huntsville being a great place to live for families. They're definitely not single-family homes. There's two 8-bedroom single-family homes. One's on 5 acres, and the other one is in a small lot like these. And the first thing it says is, this has a great rental history. That's not a single-family home. That is where you're renting, and it's an apartment or a hotel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. Any others, Shelley? Any others in the galley? Seeing none, Commissioners, thank you for that. And we'll move now to item number F on our agenda, which is a request for approval of warrants 4026 through and including 4044 and 459,716 to 459,953 and 100 to 102 in the amount of $2,019,337.82. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $119,279.72. Item 3 is a request for approval of minutes for the meetings held on June 8th, June 15th, and June 22nd, 2021. Item 4 is a request for approval of business licenses. Item 5 is a request for Weber Morgan Health Department for approval to surplus a welder. Item 6 is a request for approval of a retirement agreement by between Weber County and Rosalinda Saciro. Commissioners, comments on any of those items, 1 through and including 6? Motion to approve. Have a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a second. Before I take that, Mr. Hatch, would you go ahead and comment on that in case there warrants any other questions?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We issued 26 purchase orders this week for $119,000. About a fourth of that amount, or $28,000, is for the library, which will be used to purchase RFID tags, audiovisual materials, computers, and a traffic study. We had 2 items that were 18% of the total, or about $21,000. First was for the Golden Spike Event Center to purchase concessions as well as belt buckles for the fair. And then the Roads Department, which will purchase a truck and heavy, or which is rental for a truck and heavy equipment. And then 16%, or $19,000, is for the Health Department, which will purchase computers and vaccines. 14% or $17,000 is for the conference center for window cleaning and concessions. And then 8% or $10,000 is for IT, and that is primarily switch management software. As far as warrants, we issued 260 warrants this week for $2 million. 41% of that amount, or $820,000, is insurance for employees and retirees. 22%, or $454,000, is for the jail, and that is a significant portion is for nursing services, but also for security system controls and food. 12%, or $244,000, is for dispatch to purchase Motorola equipment. And then 8%, or $162,000, is for the Housing Authority, and those are the housing payments.
Commissioners, having heard Mr. Hatch's report, are there any comments? Before I place that motion, I just want the public to know that we don't just arbitrarily buy belt buckles for the fair, but we use belt buckles instead of trophies when people win different things in junior livestock programs. It's a much more useful award than to place it on your shelf, a static shelf. So with that, I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move now to our action items. G1 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Ring Central to upgrade the Weber County phone system. Our very own Director of IT, Quinn Fowers. Go ahead.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Mr. Fowers.
This is a contract to replace our current legacy phone system. The current system is expensive to maintain. We spend over $100,000 a year just in maintenance. It requires several in-house servers and gateways. It's extremely limited on its flexibility, and we still have to pay long distance for any calls that go out in-state or out of the state. The contract does not require any upfront costs. It actually reduces our monthly payment by $4,700. Additional savings will be recognized as we eliminate any Zoom accounts that we have or any other collaboration tools, as those will be included in this unified communication platform. The contract was originally for 60 months. We actually negotiated the upgraded handsets, free handsets for all employees, as well as saving money on the monthly costs. And in doing so, we had to extend the contract by 3 months. So the contract is 63 months instead of 60 months. Complete rollout should be approximately 5 months from start to finish, and that's after an extensive research and just to make sure things go smooth. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Fowers. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Frohr? Commissioner, this is in your portfolio. Commissioner Frohr, any comments?
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Fowers. It's something that we've discussed over the last couple of months as we meet on a monthly basis, and Quinn's done a fantastic job in negotiating this contract. I believe the savings, did you say about $4,700 a month?
Month, yeah.
So like I'm going to round that up.
$61,000 a year.
I'm going to round that up to about $60,000 a year, with the potential of saving additional dollars from reduction of Zoom meetings that we're currently paying quite a bit for. So this is another example, as Commissioner Jenkins said in his remarks, of the county looking very closely at the taxpayer dollars and how we can better use those taxpayer dollars in operations of Weber County. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion since this is in my portfolio.
Please.
So I'd make a motion that we approve the contract by and between Weber County and Ring Central to upgrade the Weber County phone system as presented by Mr. Quinn Fowers this morning.
Have a motion? Second. And a second. I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
Item
you.
number 2. Thank you, Mr. Fowers. Item number 2 is a request for approval of a resolution appointing 2 members to the Weber County Library Board. Our great library director, Linda Wangsgard, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you. As you noted, we have 2 vacancies on the Library Board of Trustees, and since we advertise continuously, current board members had a significant number of interested community members from which to choose and selecting nominees to bring to you this morning. During their May 4th board meeting, all applications were vetted, and 6 names were selected for your consideration, 3 names for each vacancy. The nominees were selected based on the skills current board members reasoned will be helpful in planning and oversight of the library operations over the next several years. Each appointee will be eligible to serve a 4-year term. The nominees' names, along with copies of their applications, have been forwarded for your review and consideration. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wingsgard. Commissioners, that was forwarded to me. I had since forwarded that to each of you, and you both had responded to that. So this should be something that you're aware of. Do you have any questions regarding that?
No.
Because this is my portfolio, I'll hold back, but ask one of you two then to make a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the resolution appointing the members as presented by Ms. Wainsgard this morning to the Library Board, Weber County Library Board.
I'll second that. That's number 24.
Resolution 24. Linda, will you, excuse me, Ms. Wainsgard, will you please just announce those names?
I'm not sure which 2 of the 6 you have selected.
We selected the 2 of your top picks. The 2 that the board recommended, the 2 top picks.
John L. Watson and Shannon Sabahar.
Those were the 2 names that were the 2 top picks that the board had put forward, the 2 names that we had both got comments on. So Mr. Watson, Ms. Sabahar, that replaces Ms. Matson and Mr. Stokes, correct?
That's correct.
Very good. Motion, that's resolution number 24.
Roll call vote.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Tell us your name again.
Craig Brandt.
Craig Brandt is new with us. We welcome you, Mr. Brandt. He's taken the place of Fatima Fernelius, who'd been here for a long time. Mr. Brandt joins us from the Pacific Northwest. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Brandt?
Okay. Roll call vote for Resolution 24-2021.
Commissioner Farrar?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Yes.
And Chairman Harvey.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wingsgard. We have another resolution, Commissioners. This is a request for approval of a resolution making an appointment to the Weber Housing Authority. Ms. Andy Beatles is here. Ms. Beatles, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yeah, I just have 2 of my board members whose terms have expired, and I'm requesting that we reappoint these 2 board members. They are Mr. Robert Bischoff with Zions Bank and Mr. Bob Hunter from Weber State University. These are 4-year terms, and both terms have expired.
Commissioner Farrar, this is in your portfolio. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I appreciate the hard work of Ms. Beatles, and I support I sit on that board, attend, I think, about all the meetings. Andy does a great job running that. It's a very effective board, and I would make the motion to approve Resolution 25, the appointments of Mr. Bob Hunter and Robert Bischoff to the Weber Housing Authority Board as presented by Ms. Beatles.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments? I'll place that motion for roll call. Craig?
Okay. Roll call vote for 25-2021. Commissioner Farrar?
Yes.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chairman Harvey?
Aye. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Beatles. Item number 4, Commissioners, is a request for approval of a resolution appointing a member of the Weber County Career Service Council. Ms. Swan, our Human Resource Director, go ahead.
We have a vacancy on our Career Service Council. Our Career Service Council is made up of 3 members of the community who are familiar with public service but who do not serve in an elected position or work for the county. Bob Hunter is currently our chair, and he deserves an award for his public service. And Marcia Owen is there. Jan Zogmaster. Her term just expired. She does not wish to renew, so I would like to appoint Kevin Mcleod, who is a former Weber County employee. He had service with our sheriff's office and with our operations department. I think he's a great fit, and he will hear appeals from our employees related to disciplinary action, also from applicants who are rejected for examination if they think there was something discriminatory, or cases where we investigate harassment, discrimination, or retaliation, where employees don't feel like the outcome was just.
Questions for Ms. Swan? Great. Is there a motion then to move forward with this?
I'd make a motion to approve resolution number 26-2021.
That's what I'd say to 262021.
And I'll second that.
Great. If there's no other comments,
Okay, roll call vote for Resolution 26-2021. Commissioner Faur?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chairman Harvey?
aye. Thank you, Mr. Brandt. Item number 5 is a request for approval of a first reading of an ordinance of the County Commissioners of Weber County amending the fees for the Ogden Echols Conference Center in Perry's Egyptian Theater. Our very own Center Director, Cassie Bybee. Ms. Bybee, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. So this is we came before with this ordinance in December, past December, but there's a few things that were left off that we just wanted to address. That being, some of those include a half-day rental in the theater, as many events come in and just are only there for 3 or 4 hours, and so we wanted to put a half-day rental fee. Also get some clarification and have it in writing that multiple day usage of the theater as well as the conference center. After the 4th day, then we'll go to a half-day rent on the 4th day and thereafter if they're renting continuously. There was some other additions. There was some new equipment that was in the theater, so we added that to the list as well, like the fog machines and hazers that we've recently purchased. So there's a rental price on that. And then that there is to make sure that we know that it's in writing that we have a $1,000 buyout fee for tickets. If we don't sell the tickets, if they don't go through Sapphire through our system, they can sell their own tickets to the event on the theater if they so choose, but we ask them to pay a $1,000 buyout ticket fee, and then they help provide their own scanners or ushers or ticket takers, if you will, because it's not through our system. Oftentimes there's a lot of mix-up or oversold of seats and things, so they help us mitigate that confusion. So we're trying to discourage that, but it's certainly a possibility if they want to sell their own tickets on another platform and just use the theater. The other items that were changed on the conference center side, we had a sliding scale prior to that was written just with a certain amount of food purchased. Then you had a sliding scale off your rental. We've gone to just a formula. It's more consistent. What we found on that sliding scale is if they spent $1 in food, sometimes their rental was waived entirely for $1. And so that wasn't working, so we went to a percentage and a formula that works well, and then there'll always be a setup fee of $150. Even if you have enough food and beverage purchased to waive your rental, you'll still have a minimum of $150 setup fee for the room. There was also, let's see, I think there was one other change on here. Oh, we wanted to make sure that outside food and beverage, we don't, where we're a fully staffed kitchen and we're a food and beverage facility, if they choose to bring outside food and beverage, they can for some of these dance and cheer groups and things and some of these big dance recitals or dance camps that come into the conference center, because they'll go to and go to all the local restaurants, and we're fine with that. But the client needs to be aware that there'll be a $1,000 cleaning fee, because what we found is as they bring all the food in, it fills all of our trash compactor and then extra housekeeping and things because of all the cleanup that we do. And so we need to cover our costs on that, because what we find is when they're in there for 3 or 4 days, it costs us an extra dumping of our garbage and things. So we want to make sure that we're covering our expenses there, but also providing the client the ability to bring in their outside food for certain things if they so desire. Mostly the camps, not banquets and things, but just for some of these competition camps.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Bybee? We're going to treat this again as another first reading, so Mr. Crockett, which means this, if we have this as a first reading, we won't do a roll call vote for ordinance. Is that correct? Thank you. Very good. Any questions for Ms. Bybee? So I'll entertain a motion to accept the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
A motion to accept the first reading, and I'll place that motion for vote here. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Brant, just so you know, that because of the first reading, we'll bring that back. And very good. Commissioners, item number 6 on our agenda is a request for approval to consider and take action on a request to amend the Weber County zone map to rezone approximately 5 acres from the CR1 zone to the FR3 zone at approximately 947 Old Snow Basin Road. Charlie Ewert. Go ahead, Mr. Ewert.
Thank you, Commissioners. It was actually noticed for 5 acres from the CVR1 zone and the CV2 zone because it affects 2 different properties. But the main property we're talking about today is the one that is currently zoned CVR1. It's a 3.22 acre property on the southwest side of Highway 39 and Old Snow Basin Road. It was the subject of a lot of public comment from earlier today. It was not noticed today as a public hearing. There was no requirement to notice it as a public hearing. I'm grateful that folks were here to speak about it during public comment period, but I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that the public hearing was noticed as required by state law and county law at the Planning Commission level.
Mr. Ewert, let me interrupt you to say that we, all of us were received emails over the weekend. Many of them were on Sunday.
Perfect.
A lot of them were cut and paste. But those those were submitted so that they're part of the official record, just so everyone knows that they were heard. I wanted that to be out in the open before we get started with your presentation. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. So you guys have discussed this in a work session. The direction that we received from the 3 of you was to have the applicant go back, work with the neighbors, and try and come to some kind of resolution on the rezone. Just to recap on what had happened at the Planning Commission forwarded a positive recommendation for the rezone on the condition that, or subject to the County Commission entering into a development agreement with the applicant to not allow short-term rentals. The applicant wasn't inclined to accept that and is requesting the possibility of doing short-term rentals as allowed by the zone. So the request is to change from the FR1 zone to the CVR1 zone to the FR3 zone. Both the CVR1 zone and the FR3 zone allow short-term rentals as a conditional use. So in both zones, the one that they have today and the one that they're asking for, they could get short-term rentals. Seems to be a little bit of confusion based on some of the comments that were given in this meeting earlier about what is allowed currently on the property. It's currently zoned CVR1, that's a commercial zone. The applicant is proposing 13 dwelling units. They could actually be proposing greater than, it's 21 dwelling units to the acre, and they have 3 acres. So do the math on that, 3.22 acres. So there's quite a few more that could actually be proposed here, including condominiums. Multiple different hotels could go on the site. There's a lot that can happen under the CVR1 zone. The FR3 zone, however, is far less impactful. It does allow about the same amount of density as the CVR1 zone, but it doesn't allow the density in combination with the commercial. In a CVR1 zone, if you were to do that much residential, at least 10% of your development has to be commercial. And so the CVR1 zone, in my opinion, is far more impactful, and I don't think we'll realize the impact of the CVR1 zone until resort-oriented hotelier decides to come and locate on that property. Nothing has materialized in the past on the property, but the CVR1 zone currently exists there because a hotel was previously proposed and approved on that site. Now that has expired. There apparently wasn't a market to support a hotel there, and now this current landowner is in the process of, this current applicant is in the process of acquiring the property and would like 13 single-family dwelling units. I did recommend approval to the Planning Commission of the rezone because I felt like it was far less impactful than what the CVR1 zone. I thought it was a fairly decent compromise. The applicant is only proposing 13 dwelling units because they've only got 13 connections for water and sewer. There was a little bit of comment outside of this meeting about connection to the utilities that were there. The utility company had rescinded their will serve letter. They have since reissued that will serve letter for those 13 units. And some of that had to do with the short-term rentals. The concern was that short-term rentals of these dwellings might behave a little more commercial in nature than it will in residential in nature. In terms of usage, using it as residential as short-term rentals instead of commercial, I do believe that the short-term rentals will use significantly less water. Restaurants and other types of commercial uses use quite a bit of water and need quite a bit of sewer. In working with, we did have a meeting with the utility entity and chatted about some of the concerns that they have. After that discussion, we put a line in the development agreement that staff and the developer have negotiated that says that they can't do short-term rentals on the property until the utility company is comfortable with it. And I think that's the prerogative of the utility company to say yay or nay on the uses of their water and sewer facilities. That doesn't mean that other water is not available to this developer. They could potentially find other water resources to maximize on their full density. In other words, if they were to connect to another water source, whether they develop it themselves or otherwise, they could potentially go upwards of 21 units to the acre. So 13 dwelling units, whether or not they are allowed as short-term rentals, is far less impactful than what's already allowed under the CVR1 zone. Regarding short-term rentals, the applicant has volunteered to be governed by the draft short-term rental ordinance that we've been working on over the last year. And so they basically copied and pasted the ordinance that is, as it currently stands, the last version of the ordinance as it stood before you as proposed a few months ago. That ordinance requires, and if this is adopted through a development agreement, it'll be in the development agreement, requires them to have an authorized agent. It requires all of the property to be managed by one authorized agent. And so the gentleman online, I think, spoke about the concerns about trying to manage the difference between 13 different property owners and 13 different short-term rentals. It will all be managed by the same agency. There's a requirement for that authorized agent to be able to be on the property within 1 hour of a complaint, no matter what time of day that complaint is made. So if there's a big party going on in the middle of the night, that agent needs to be there within an hour. Now, obviously, we're not going to expect those agents to put themselves in harm's way, so if there is an element of fear that comes with these parties, that would be obviously a call to the police department or the sheriff's office to get someone up there. In volunteering to be governed by the proposed language of the short-term rentals, the applicant is also obligated to certain operational standards. They've got to work through any issues with the fire department. They've got to make sure these buildings are built in a way that short-term rentals can occur. One of the concerns that was brought up in public comment was this seems to be an end run around some of the commercial requirements for hotels. For example, ADA, Americans with Disability Act, accessibility. That's a concern with short-term rentals across the board, no matter where they are. And that is what it is. Once you start allowing short-term rentals, the question is it commercial or is it still residential? And so far, the state of Utah hasn't been inclined to weigh in on whether it's commercial or residential. In fact, every piece of legislation that I've seen that have since been defeated has suggested these are still residential units. They're just allowed for short-term rentals, which is in line with long-term rentals. They're just residential units going for shorter periods of time. That said, I have in your packet 3 opportunities for approval of the rezone, just different options for you guys to take today if you choose to do so. And then, as always, you've got the option to table it pending further research or information, and you've got the option to deny it outright and give the applicant their answer today. So the three options for approval is, number one, just go with what the Planning Commission recommended, and that is to allow the development, or excuse me, allow the rezone with an agreement that prohibits short-term rentals. So if you do choose that option, I'm going to ask that you table it today, because we didn't write a development agreement with that specific caveat in there. The development agreement we wrote leads to option 2. So option 2 is approve the rezone with the proposed development agreement. The applicant's comfortable with the development agreement. So far, given all of the circumstances, staff are comfortable with the development agreement, and we think that it could be beneficial in governing the uses on the property, including short-term rentals. Option number 3 is to go with staff's original recommendation to the Planning Commission, which is to rezone the property, period. No extra rules or anything like that. It's just rezone it to the FR1 zone. Now, if you do option 3, the question about STRs is something kicked down the road. Short-term rentals would then become allowed by conditional use permit, and the developer or anyone who owns those residences later would have to come in and get a short-term rental conditional use permit and license from the Planning Commission. One of the concerns about going with option 3 is that conditional use permits, by and large, should not be denied. In fact, right across the valley, 2 conditional use permits for short-term rentals in the FR3 zone, I believe, were denied by the Planning Commission and overturned on appeal because we're obligated by state law to approve unless impacts, reasonably anticipated impacts, cannot be mitigated. One of the primary impacts is parking. Where are all the cars going to go? Parking and traffic. If you look at the proposed development, so those were your 3 options. Option 2 is to go with the development agreement that is attached to the packet. That's the applicant's desired approach. In that development agreement, you'll see a proposed site layout in which there are at least 8 parking spaces per dwelling unit, including some excess parking spaces for other guests. 2 of those parking spaces are in the garage. We, as staff, as well as in tandem with working with the neighbors, wanted to make sure that the boats, the RVs, the trailers, the camper trailers, they're not parked out on the street. They're not parked in the other neighborhoods. They're not parked next door where they shouldn't be. And so we worked with the applicant to kind of move the buildings around a little bit to make sure that there's parking between the dwelling units for at least a RV and a truck, which would take up 2 of those parking spaces, if not more. Make sure I hit the main points. There is one additional thing. If you do want to go ahead with the applicant's request of adopting the rezone and the development agreement that's in your packet, we've got one page that's missing as part of the exhibits. It's the landscape plan. So if you were to turn to the back and look at, I believe it's Exhibit C in that development agreement, you'll see a pretty picture of a landscape plan, but there's no detail about what that landscaping is. So I've requested a page 2 that takes every single one of those plantings that they're showing on that diagram and lists out what they're supposed to be: species, size, caliper. And one of the reasons I'm asking for that is because in working with the neighbors, we wanted to make sure that we provided appropriate screening of the property from the neighboring subdivision. That includes a berm on the property, and it includes landscaping. So we want to make sure the trees are big enough, at least from the planting, to provide a sufficient level of screening, and then allow them to grow from there to provide even more screening. There was a concern about fencing the subdivision and about not allowing a fence there on Highway 39. The applicant has proposed a shorter split rail fence along Highway 39. That actually is very similar to some of the other split rail fences that are in the area. That's what I have for you guys. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Ewert. Commissioners Farrar, Commissioners Jenkins, what comments or questions do you have for Mr. Ewert regarding this proposal? Go ahead, Commissioner Farrar.
No questions. I think I understand what has been presented by staff. So I'm fairly familiar with this piece of property, and I guess a couple of thoughts in the regard that it is a CV commercial zone, has been that way for a number of years, as long as I can remember. And it's interesting to see in the development of the valley over the past number of years that that's probably not a prime commercial site. And I think if you look at the most recent general plan of the valley, that's probably not going to be designated as a central village site or commercial in the future. It probably is a more residential use, in my opinion. And at the same time, I appreciate the options and appreciate the developer willing to say that he would abide by the draft agreement for the STRs that we've been looking at over the past several months. But my concern, Mr. Chair, is until we finalize that STR agreement, and I'm not sure we're substantially close to completing that by some of the comments in the valley, I think it would be appropriate to either go with the Planning Commission's recommendations about limiting STRs on that particular site, or tabling this until that STR ordinance can be implemented. I think there's some provisions that we've suggested in that STR ordinance, i.e. owner-occupied, a few other things that would alleviate some of the concerns, but as of today, we haven't, at least I haven't seen a consensus of the Valley residents that would support STRs. I can say this, being a resident of Ogden Valley for approximately the past 70 years, with family members being there since the 1860s, the valley's changed. The valley's changed substantially since I was raised in there in the 1950s and 60s. We need to understand that these people coming in that are now coming from out of state to call this their home weren't around in the valley in the 50s and 60s and even early 70s when the Ogden Valley wasn't the place that was recognized as the place to be. So I would say that we need to show some respect for those citizens that have been there for a long period of time, show some respect for private property rights that the people that live there for a number of years. But I'm not prepared to address the STRs at this point in time until we have an ordinance that is supported by majority, or what we consider to be a consensus in Ogden Valley. So that would be my thought process, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Mr. Crockett, you had a question for Mr. Ewert.
Yeah, I had a similar concern that Chair Farrar expressed, is referring to a draft ordinance that hasn't been officially passed. I mean, can you tell us a little bit how far along in the process? I mean, a concern would be, what if it substantially changes from what is proposed now to what will actually be passed in the future, if it's even passed at all?
Yeah, I appreciate that. That is a risk that is run. As we have proposed the ordinance, we believe it meets industry best practices. We believe that if an ordinance is going to be supported by the public, it would be this version. The big question is, where is short-term rentals allowed? In fact, we've had a few people who have been huge opponents to short-term rentals calling and asking why the new rules we've been talking about haven't been implemented. And so that's an interesting little note for the commissioners to consider. They could be potentially implemented in areas where the STRs are allowed, like the FR3 zone or the CBR1 zone.
Charlie, is there a provision in the development agreement that says this will be updated based on whatever's ultimately passed? You still run a risk if it's not passed.
Yes. So as far as it not getting passed, we are actually taking the language that's in the proposal and putting it in the development agreement. So those rules will apply to the property in perpetuity. The concern that I'm hearing is what happens if those rules aren't enough. There is language in the development agreement in a couple of different ways. So there is a vesting clause. Let me move to that. That says that the developers vested in the ordinances as they exist today. But it does also say that if the rules change, the applicant would have the right and ability to move to the new zone. The risk that is run is if we create a better ordinance that restricts short-term rentals even more, this document would prevail and it would supersede that. And so the applicant would essentially have the choice whether or not they want to be governed by the new rules or stay as governed under the development agreement. We do have a term limit set on the development agreement of 10 years. That's primarily for development obligations. There is language in there that says once you've established a use allowed by the development agreement, so let's say it's short-term rentals, once you've established short-term rentals, the rules that are governing under the development agreement will prevail in perpetuity as grandfathered rights, essentially. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Excuse me, commissioners, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but
we're not taking comments. I'm sorry. We're not taking
matter.
I'm sorry, we're not taking comments. Thank you. We gave extra time to Mr. Byrd this morning. Any other questions for Mr. Ewert? I'm at a crossroads here. We allow, we do something that is less impactful by allowing the change to the new zone, or we go with what most of the emails said to me, don't allow the change and have it be more impactful. One of the persons who commented on the earlier today was, it'll obstruct my view. I think 13 units over 3 acres, in my perspective, is far less impactful for a view than a hotel. I don't understand that comment. We either support the Planning Commission or we support the residents. There's not a way to win here. If we deny, then STRs will go forward because it's allowed in that zone. So deny the change and STRs will be allowed in that zone. That's true. That's what carries now. So that's where I'm conflicted right now. Is that true, Charlie? If we deny the zone, then the current zone allows it for STRs. Is that correct?
Yes. CBR 1 zone does allow short-term rentals by conditional use permit.
Plus it allows some commercial. Thank you. By law, that's what's allowed. Correct. So we can sit here, and I don't have any more comments than that, other than I'll ask either one of the two of you to make a recommendation. There are 4 options. To go with Planning Commission and approve with no STRs. The second is to approve with the development agreement as presented by staff. Number 3 is to rezone with no rules, or number 4 is to deny. And if we rezone with no rules, that to me is not an option, but I'm waiting for if we go with the planning, then they're asking us to table that for today. Would either one of you like to make a motion or recommendation? I know Commissioner Jenkins, you're on a short time. I want your recommendation. You want to make a motion? Okay. You want to make a motion, Commissioner?
I don't want to, but I will.
Okay.
So I'm going to, again, I have some concerns about approving the option with the draft agreement until that's finalized. That's my major concern. I just don't know how that really holds water. So, and until we can come to a definite consensus on STRs, which hopefully will be this year, I would hope that would, so we can deal with this and get this moving forward for all the citizens in Ogden Valley that have been there for a long period of time or that have been there for a short period of time. It concerns us all. So my motion, Mr. Chair, would be to table this resolution, or table this approval to consider a request to amend the Weber County zone map to rezone from CVR1 to FR3 for a future date.
So by tabling it, Commissioner, are you trying to kill it or just delay it? Because by tabling it, you put this individual in a hold pattern.
I hate to do that, but at this point in time, until, no, I absolutely am not trying to kill it. I think I'm trying to come to a resolution. I'd prefer to come to a resolution on the STRs. But I'm comfortable, I'm also comfortable holding to the current zone, which is a CV1, which would be to deny the application.
Wouldn't that be the better motion?
Depends on what your vote is.
I'll second that.
Wow. So we have a motion and a second. So just to say, so you're going to table, your motion is to table this until we come up with the STR language.
That would be my, yeah, that would be mine, and I would also add to that to instruct staff to work with the developer. I'm comfortable keeping it the CV commercial. I'm comfortable keeping it CV. But I would like the opportunity for staff to work with the developer before we make that. So, Commissioner Jenkins, that's really the intent of tabling, is to give some time for staff and the developer to talk about the CV zone versus FR. But I'm not comfortable moving ahead with the STR provision until such time as we come to consensus, which again, I'm not going to put a time frame on. We've been talking about that for a year. It could easily be another year to 2 years before we resolve that issue.
So we have a motion and a second to table this. Before I call for the vote, I've been working in construction industry now for 33 years. This is a developer that I would love to do any of my projects because he knows how to. I love that he works with government. I don't know you except for in these meetings. We've had one meeting alone, and many of the people who had opinions about this project were in that same meeting. That's the only time I've met alone with this person. I think you deserve to be heard and you deserve to do what you do. I'm going to place that motion for vote, but I want you to know that I appreciate what you're trying to do and your willingness, sir, to work with us through this. I don't have I'd love to see you move forward and do whatever you want to with your property under the law. And so I appreciate the way you've handled this very much, and I commend you for the way you've done this. Thank you. So, Commissioners, I'll place this motion for vote. This is a vote again to table this motion so our staff can get with the developer. All in favor of that?
Aye. Aye.
I'm going to vote nay. Thank you. And he's out of here. Great. We'll now go to Commissioner comments, which is item number H, like hotel. Any comments, Commissioner?
Just wish you a happy, and all the citizens out there, a happy 4th of July. Be safe.
Great, appreciate that.
Have fun, but be safe.
Yeah, great. Motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? Adjourn.
Aye.